Welcome to Education in Focus. I'm your host, Eliana Kernodle. A new national poll shows many Americans support school choice measures that would allow families to use taxpayer funds to attend a private school. Joining me to dig into this is Chalkboard News editor Brendan Clary. Brendan, tell us about this poll.
Yeah, so essentially the poll is from the Center Square Voters Voice poll, and it's conducted by Noble Predictive Insights. And they asked 2,200 likely voters, registered voters who are likely to vote, about their thoughts on, whether they support a federal tax credit program that would allow students to attend a school of their choice, including a private school. And 69% of those likely voters said that they support that. And only 20% of voters said that students should attend the schools that they are assigned to attend. And I think that, part of that might be that, if you kind of frame it that way, especially, Americans are like, oh yeah, I think that people should be able to do what works for them and that they could support that. But again, 69%, that's quite a large majority. And when I spoke to David Byler, who's the chief of research at Noble Predictive Insights, the firm that does the polling, and he basically said that the question is asking voters like how they respond to the conservative argument for school choice, or these, education savings accounts. Some people call them vouchers, basically like using public funds for private schools. Like, how do people feel about that? And essentially, having a choice when it comes to education. And basically he said that the poll found that message is working very well. Like that idea that people should be able to choose where their kids go to school, and using, the public funds for even a private school, that people want to have that. And even across political parties, I mean, we had 62% of Democrats saying that parents should have a choice, 77% of Republicans saying that they should have a choice, by far the highest. And then true independents at 60%. And I thought that was kind of interesting that true independents had actually the lowest percentage of that. So I don't know if, they might be more clued in, but you had only 24% of true independents saying no. So there was definitely a little bit more of like, I'm not sure in the true independents, which I think kind of cut into that. So, but it was surprising to see Democrats are even, very much 6 in 10 Democrats are saying, yeah, I support a federal tax credit that would allow parents to send their students to school of their choice. So, and I was speaking with David Byler about this, and he said basically what you look at with Republicans, like this is that wedge issue where they're all in favor and then the Democrats are split. And he said that with the Democrats, you do have some divides in the party. Essentially, you have like a pro-reform wing who is open to charter schools that are open to these different kinds of measures that allow for sort of these broader reforms. And then David Byler said that you have more of a teachers union oriented side, like kind of like that traditionalist, like rigid, like we're going to stay in here. And if we have more school funding, we'll be all set, right? We need to have more funds for schools, and so that you kind of have like those at odds in the Democratic Party, which is something that he was pointing out is like why you have, more of that side who are against it in the Democratic Party probably than in the true independent side. You have people who are staunchly against these kinds of, vouchers, and maybe they're more clued in on like, this is what, the effects would be, is that maybe more money would be moving away. So he said another question that you could ask to try to figure that out would be if you think that school choice would weaken public schools. So he said that might be a way to kind of suss out like how do Democrats respond to that. And I think you'd probably find that a lot of them, are kind of sympathetic to that, right? And so Byler called that the strongest Democratic messaging, the idea that the school choice is ultimately going to lead to lower quality or fewer resources for public schools. And so that's something that you kind of hear from people who are in teachers unions or have that sort of like Democratic candidates who are supportive of teachers unions, that basically if you're moving taxpayer funds to these private schools, it's gonna cut into what the resources are available for public schools, right? And so I think that's a different kind of question than this one. So I think you can maybe have both of, like voters are pretty, they might not be clued into some of like how this works. Like, so yeah, you broadly support this, but if you were asked a different question, it'd be interesting to see that. And that wasn't one that we asked this time.
And I think that's such an interesting thing that he highlights is this element of, to a large degree, this question isn't entirely about figuring out where people fall on this issue so much as it's about how do they respond to the message that different parties have.
Yeah, I think that that's totally true. That this is like a testament to sort of that messaging, right? Of like, do you support school choice in education? And it's like, yeah, people broadly do, but that doesn't necessarily mean, like what you were saying, that like they will kind of take it to that other level, because it is like you get into some of the complexities of this and like the different funding. Like, you kind of have to ask like a lot of different questions, right? Like, do you want public funds to go away from your traditional public school and go toward private schools in your area? Like, is a little bit of a different question. Like, do you support school choice? So again, it is very interesting, and people are complex, right? And you can have different thoughts on these issues and kind of hold them, I think, in tandem of like, yeah, I want people to have school choice, but also like, if you were to ask me, should my local public school lose money to a private school in the area, like I don't know, I think you could have both. And I think that that's kind of like the complex part about it. But it's a very interesting, David was also talking about how this idea of like the market forces on Republicans, like they're very keen on that and saying like, let's like let the market do the work. And basically, if public schools can't keep up with private schools, then like you got to have sort of this competition, and that through competition, you're breeding excellence. And I think that is something that you kind of see on these pro reform through school choice. It's not just like, hey, we can fix public schools. Like, we fix public schools through these education savings account that make them accountable, because they have to catch up. They have to show that they're valuable, right? Because if you can kind of have something that's not, like a monopoly unit on something, then, that competition comes in and people have choices, families have choices. So that's definitely the pro reform aspect that Republicans are generally focused on, because of those, the school choice proponents who are saying like, let's open it up and have like radical market forces at work. And Democrats, I think, are probably less into that, and again, we'd have to ask that separate question, but they're very focused on reform. And if I think for them too, still, like if that means that kids can have a choice or families can have a choice for what works for them, that people do broadly support that messaging, that idea, and even that federal tax, program that would allow that to happen. But again, did the details get a little fuzzy? Maybe.
Well, Brendan, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at chalkboardnews.com.